Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of MindFit Podcast. My name is Robert Aceves, and I'm here with Neil Babins. How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really excited for another episode. I'm really happy with the outcome so far. People are really, starting the messages more and more every day, which I love. And I heard you had an interview, right?
I did. Somebody came across the podcast and was interested in what we were talking about and looked me up on social media and said, "Can I interview you for my own podcast?" And I said, certainly. And she wanted to talk about addictions. We talked about one of our earlier episodes. We talked a little bit about the pendulum effect, the pendulum swing, and how that, I had isolated that part of me that was addictive inside my personality and gotten over the weight issue and the binge eating issue. And she had an issue with gambling. And a lot of her listeners were also, struggling with addiction. So she was very interested in understanding how I isolated that and dissected that. So she wanted to hear more about it. So we talked for probably a good hour on her podcast as well. And it was amazing actually. Her name is Bobby. She lives in upstate New York, Bobby Malatesta. So hopefully she'll hear the podcast and she'll hear me mentioning her. So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very glad. I'm happy for you. And thank you for all the people that are listening to us now. I really appreciate your time and hopefully we continue to do this for some time. And today we're actually going to be talking about self-actualizing during the crisis. Just this morning, by the way, I heard that LA County has extended their quarantine for 3 more months. And I was shocked when I heard that, but at the same time I understand it because their cases keep coming up, and so this crisis is starting to drag for some people, and actually this is not just in LA County but all over the world, and so there are other places that are opening up again, and so there's a little bit of fear. But anyway, with all this stuff going on, I think this is a good subject, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Maslow hierarchy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. A lot of my, I should mention, by the way, the podcast I was interviewed in is called 3-2-1 No Kidding.
Okay.
So you might want to look that up because people are probably, what podcast was it? So it's called, it's 3-2-1 No Kidding by Bobby Malatesta. She's in upstate New York. She's fantastic. I really enjoyed talking to her. So, awesome. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I've noticed a lot of my clients have been talking about, what do I do now that we're in social isolation, we're locked down, all of our basic social distractions have been eliminated from us. Our lives have been restructured into a entirely different routine. Some people are going stir crazy. Some people are enjoying the break. Some people are somewhere in between. And a lot of people, of course, are schooling their kids from home, working from home, not working at all. A lot of different kinds of stressors going on. So people have really gone on reset, personal reset and emotional reset. And this is a time when I've noticed from talking to a lot of clients that what do I do with myself now? How do I keep myself busy? How do I keep myself interested really in life? And, when things go back to, quote, relative normal, and like you just said, Robert, probably won't for a while. Do I want to go back to my life the way it was, or do I want to recreate something or find, search inside myself something that's larger than what I used to know myself to be, type of thing. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs just came up because he's got 5 levels. From the bottom, say, look at it like a pyramid. The very bottom would be physiological needs that a person has: food, drink, shelter, clothing, warmth, sex, and sleep. I don't think that's a problem for most people when they're home. And then there's safety needs, which is physiological needs that are satisfied for security, safety, police, schools, business, medical care, that kind of thing, which we pretty much have intact during the lockdown. Then there's the third one is love and belonging, which includes friendship, intimacy, trust, acceptance, receiving and giving affection and love, which has been affected because people can't really see their loved ones as much. But we do have social media and Zoom platforms. And then the 2 top ones are esteem needs and then self-actualization. And they kind of overlap. They've always kind of overlapped to me. Esteem is like esteem for oneself, dignity, achievement, mastery, independence, desire for reputation or respect from others, status, prestige, what you do for a living type thing, which can be affected if people are working from home in certain cases. And then self-actualization is the top one, which is about a person's potential, realizing your potential, self-fulfillment, personal growth, peak experiences, what you desire to be or to become. And so I just thought this was a great topic because this is what a lot of people have a chance to take a look at. We ask in clinical psych, we often ask a question called the DARE question, DARE, which basically says, if you could do anything that you wanted and you were guaranteed not to fail at it, what would you do? Now, keep it no fantasy. Don't say I'm going to go visit Andromeda because that's terrific.
Right.
I'd love to come with you, but keep it down to earth, sustainable, attainable, achievable, measurable, and something in the positive frame. I'd like to do this as opposed to I'd like to eliminate this. So, what would you do if you could do anything you wanted? Now, I know that people can't do anything they want because there's restrictions, but the idea is just to open up your mind and get people thinking as to what you can do. So, a lot of people I talk to have kids at home, and after they've homeschooled them type thing, they're left with a lot of free time. People say, well, I could do yoga. I can go out for a run. I could watch my favorite shows. I could make dinner. I could learn how to cook. But then what can I do? What do I want to do over and above that I've always wanted to try? I've always wanted to dive into. One person I know is learning Spanish. Another person is discovering that part of themselves that was into art, so they're ordering little things online and actually building art, and maybe we'll sell it online, that kind of thing. So that's what I mean by self-actualization, at least in this context. What can you do that is still available to you? Because there's a lot that's available out there. The internet, thank heaven, is still working. So what can you do to bring yourself to that level? As opposed to just getting by and surviving and waiting for them to say, we're lifting, Yeah.
I know. Yeah, that could be a while actually, but I totally agree with everything you said. And self-actualization, we also talked about, I think we did a podcast on how it's also related to enlightenment. And spiritually speaking, when we can reach our full potential and get to know ourselves, really well, that's when we can really call ourselves enlightened. And I feel like part of that is learning. Part of that is taking our time to, understand what our needs are. In this case, we have the physical needs, but also there's spiritual needs, and our mind also needs food. And part of that food is learning. And what are we good at? What kind of things we can try? And I feel like this is a good time for all these things. Also, I read this morning that American Idol has been doing their show from home. A lot of the people in the show have been singing from their backyards and filming themselves with an iPhone, but it's not working. People are not really into that, and apparently the ratings are going down. Same with Saturday Night Live and a bunch of other shows that are doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so TV is going down, and right now what we're left with is, people are, we have the ability to literally go and find whatever entertainment we want to look into. And what best way is, than to find something that can actually teach us something and something that we can grow from. And there's so many apps like Udemy and Skillshare and all those different things that you can learn, like you said, a language. But also, I feel like it's important to take time for ourselves. Right now, this whole thing could, make some people feel like they're in prison or they're at home. Like Ellen DeGeneres has recently mentioned that she feels like she's in prison, even though she lives in a $27 million home. And, it's really a psychological thing that we can feel that way because we can't go out, we can't travel, we can't do a lot of things. And so part of the work that we're talking about, self-actualization is to go inside and to, do it like you are in a monastery in Japan,
Yeah.
So I don't know what you think about that.
Well, it's exactly right. If what if you could ask yourself the what if question, the hypothetical, what if things lifted tomorrow and things went back to a relative new normal, right? What would you want to do differently that you've been doing previously? That's one way to look at it also. And another question to ask yourself is, what was your old normal? And when they lift things, it goes back to a relative new normal. True, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but just assume it goes back to something relatively close. What would you like to do differently, or more of, or less than, or how would you change it around when things open up? Because Maslow said, I just read a quote right here. It said, "It is quite true that man lives by bread alone, but when there is no bread, but what happens to man's desires when there is plenty of bread and his belly is chronically filled? At once other and higher needs emerge, and these, rather than physiological hungers, dominate the organism. And when these in turn are satisfied, again new and still higher needs emerge, and so on. This is what we mean by saying that the basic human needs are organized into a hierarchy of relative prepotency." Wow, what a word. Okay. So, basically, just because Ellen's in prison in a 27-room mansion, and some people are in one-bedroom apartments with 5 people. So so it's all relative and subjective. But just because we are sort of enclosed and can't do a lot of things, and our structures are minimized, the idea is what would you do if your world opened up? If your world opened up inside that little microcosm that you're in right now, and you could expand upon that, in terms of researching yourself on the internet, or researching yourself internally. Like, who are you? What are your values? Are they the same that they were before? Are they, who can you be? Who can you become? Just live as if all the bread is there. Like you said, your bellies are chronically filled, because that's one way to look at it. It's reframing what's going on, as opposed to being in prison. Just imagine you're just resting.
In a retreat.
In a retreat. You're resting. A chance to take a look mindfully, to take a look at, who am I? Who do I want to be? And now that the world is closed, when it opens, what do I want to do? And how do I want to do it differently? What's something I've always wanted to try? What's something that I always wish I had done before that I can do now? People started off the first few weeks, I think, saying things like, "Oh, I could watch reruns of my favorite show, or I could check out that movie I've never checked out." And that's great. But after 2-3 weeks, I am noticing that people are saying, "Okay, what now?" So, So those are the basic needs that are being taken care of. So what now is a good question,
I agree.
And I just want to say that people shouldn't, don't use the word should. Like, "Oh, I should. I've got all this time on my hands," because that's just shaming ourselves. That's not being kind to ourselves. That's draining ourselves and saying, "Oh, I should do this or this or this. I should self-actualize, because I've got all this time." You could self-actualize. You could ask yourself certain questions about your life, about yourself. You have time to do it, and you have time to reflect, and you have time to take a look at, what's out there that is available to you in there, in social media, in the online process, to become more of who you've always wanted to be.
And interestingly enough, this situation is pushing a lot of people into finding that out, about themselves. And just yesterday, I had somebody who really, really needed some help that I haven't seen for a long time. And she called me finally. She said, I really need to talk to someone. I need some help. And then I asked her, "So what's going on?" And then she started crying right away. She started bawling. And I'm like, "What's okay?" And then I just listened to her for a little bit. And then she was explaining to me that with this quarantine, she's been at home by herself for the past 2 months with no one. She's single. She doesn't have anybody. Both her kids are older and they're already doing their life. And so she feels very lonely. And she was like, I started to realize that my life has not gone anywhere. Things are not the way I expected them to be. I've been thinking so much. Some days I don't even feel like getting out of bed. And I just need help. And I just had to call you. And so she did. And we started talking about it, and basically all the stuff you just mentioned, it's like it's in the top of her head. Like, I feel like my decisions in life haven't been the same, the ones that I thought I was going to be doing. I feel like my life has not gone the way I wanted it to be. And she's still, relatively young, but, the fact that this is happening is making a lot of us rethink our lives, look at our decisions. Some people too. I've had people that are living with, their spouses, and they're starting to get on each other's nerves. And, now any little thing starts to become a problem. And it's also because, you start to see, okay, this is what I ended up with. Is this really what I wanted? And some people, they used to work all the time, so they didn't really see each other, or they saw each other for a couple hours a day. And now they're seeing each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's like, oh man, like I really know what I got now. And they're saying there's going to be a lot of divorces after this. But, and then there's also people that are loving their lives, that, love being with their family and just loving spending time with them. Some of those people probably have money to not have to worry about the money part. But then there's other people who are also suffering from the money situation because they're worried about, their next meal. And there's all kinds of stuff happening right now that, I feel like it's important to look at the needs of people right now. And I think that obviously there are a lot of businesses that are going under, but there's also a lot of opportunity of things that could come up. And that's what we're talking about. How to self-actualize in this time of crisis, and how can you find yourself, and use the situation to grow out of it and to come up with something, maybe a business, or maybe some kind of a way to grow and learn, like we talked about, a language, or prepare yourself for the future,
Mm-hmm.
So
and asking yourself, like, what do people need right now? What are the needs of others right now? If you're looking for how to market something, or it's like a circle became an ellipsis,
right?
Because a lot of businesses, like you say, are closing down or slowing down, or may never come back or bounce back. But a lot of them are booming because of the situation. So where inside of that boom can you see yourself? Zoom platforms have just exploded. People are now, I do wonder, going forward, if, like, for example, people are giving yoga classes online or doing workshops online, if that's going to go back to the old normal, even after everything lifts. Some of it probably will, but a lot of it probably won't, because people say, this is pretty cool. This is pretty accessible and convenient. You don't have to worry about parking. You don't have to worry about traffic. I don't have to worry as a professional, where you are in California. I'm licensed in California. It doesn't matter if you're in Oakland. It doesn't matter if you're on the border of Oregon. It doesn't matter if you're down in San Diego. It doesn't matter where you are. I can reach out to you and you to me. And, and what do people need right now? What's accessible, to people right now, and what do people need? How could you be of service to others? And I think that's a point about transcendence and self-actualization. Is how could you be of service to other people? Because that's really gives us a sense of belonging, a real sense of purpose. How could we help other people, especially because there are so many people in need that are not dealing with the transition as well as others. And transcendence, Maslow says, a person is motivated by values which transcend beyond the personal self. So he means mystical experiences, or certain experiences with nature, aesthetic experiences, he even says sexual experiences, service to others, the pursuit of science, religious faith, spirituality, so whatever is something that, touches on you in that way. How do you transcend and self-actualize? Transcendence is actually the level of self-actualization above self-actualization. So he calls self-actualization number 7, realizing personal potential, self-fulfillment, seeking personal growth and peak experiences, a desire to become, quote, to become everything one is capable of becoming. And then transcendence is that one above that, which is mystical experiences, nature, aesthetic experiences, and so on. Service to others. How could you be of service to others right now? Even if it's just putting funny memes on Facebook. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Keeping people, checking in with people that you haven't checked in with for a very long time, putting it together a social group of some sort, social media group, women with children who are still in elementary school during the lockdown, create a page, you know what I'm saying? Any kind of message that would transcend who you normally know yourself to be, and reach out in that way. A lot of people are, I know, fixing up their houses, doing crafts at home they never thought they would do,
right.
Myself included. I'm like, wow, I didn't know I can actually do this. So,
it's important to start to realize that this is something that's not going to go away, right away. It's going to be a while until we find a cure. And so things are changing, and it's okay that things are changing. But we have to go with the changes as well. And maybe, like this lady that came yesterday, that was talking to me, she was very, lonely for the past 2 months until she decided to do something about it and to call me and do something that, she was thinking about doing for a long time, and it's been like maybe 5 to 10 years since the last time I saw her, because, she was not doing great back then, but then things got better in her life until recently she started to feel this way, and this is the case for a lot of people who, for example, used to work in restaurants, or people who used to work in the service industry, that they needed to go out and they kept themselves busy constantly. And now they're just at home sitting all day long, or, doing things that they never did. And it's starting to become a problem, but it is only a problem if we allow it to become a problem. And so the idea here is to motivate yourself to go deep inside and find yourself, and to keep growing, even though it's harder to do that right now for some people. It's still, easy if you start to take your time to go into those feelings and look at what's going on, and to also set boundaries, like take time to yourself, even though, you have all day long. Apparently, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving yourself that time. If you really sit, for example, in meditation, or you say, okay, I'm going to start, a schedule where I'm going to be working from home, doing something, or looking for jobs, or, finding a class that you love from some kind of activity that you want to learn and practicing that is also time for yourself. So all these activities will eventually help you feel better, and it's kind of a therapy that you can do from home. And the idea is to have something in your mind that you want to come up with in the future. Like you said, ask yourself that question: if you could do anything, what would that be? And start working on that today, because we have the time. So and if you have an idea, why not start it? Start doing it. There's so many tools that we have online that we can use. So I feel like there's really no excuse not to do it, except for ourselves. Like, we can be the ones that are stopping ourselves from doing it. Just real quick, an example is I started doing my own YouTube channel, and I started filming myself recently, and oh my gosh, man, it was so hard for me because and I've done acting, I've been in movies and done a lot of things before, but it's not the same thing when you're in front of the camera, being yourself, and trying to talk to people that you don't know and come up with ideas. And sometimes in my head, it sounds really, really good. But then when I'm in front of the camera, like, suddenly my mind just goes blank. And, I really admire a bunch of YouTubers that are really good at it. But it's a practice thing. And I've been practicing in front of the camera for hours, and it's not easy. But it's growing, and I feel like I'm growing inside because of this, and it's something anybody can do from home. And I feel like it's the future, like you mentioned, Zoom. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to work from home in some way or another at some capacity,
Yeah, absolutely. And, for example, if you started to build furniture, or you started to do, take up knitting, or you're creating something at home, or art, or baking. A lot of people are doing baking and cooking. You can go online to the YouTube channel or to a Zoom platform, and you could actually show people your recipes. You could share it with people, your recipes and your craft and how to do things, how-tos. A lot of people want to know how-to, because they can't really have a service person come over to the house to put their piece of furniture together. So maybe you can show them, you can do a how-to, whatever you're passionate about. And there's so many ways to reach out in that way. So many, so many ideas that you could, if you've learned how to do it, or you know how to do it, you just never really had the time, or never really had the inclination, and now you're doing it, share it. You know what I mean? You could put it online, and, have a self-service type of thing. You can't really have somebody come over and, even like, I don't know, basic plumbing issues or something like that, or, nothing major, because you don't want to cause a problem, but, there's going to be certain things you're going to have a professional do, but, or things like your car, people don't know how to, what's wrong with my car? It's making this funny noise. Usually we take it to a mechanic. And now there are still mechanics open, but if that's not convenient, maybe a mechanic can go online and say, if it's this, it might be this, check out this. This is something you could safely do on your own. Or you need to see a mechanic. It could be one of these things. People go online for like legal questions all the time, for example. That's always been a service. So anything that you do, if you have an accounting question, if you have a sociology question, People need help tutoring, in school. They're online, taking online courses. A lot of people are trying to adjust to that kind of atmosphere. I did a lot of studying online myself, so I'm used to it, but a lot of people are not. I have nobody to ask, or professors. It takes 3 hours for them to get back to me, or 2 days to get back to me. Maybe there's a tutorial that you can do if you're good at something. There's so many ways to reach out and to self-actualize and transcend, as Maslow says in this prison sentence, as Ellen says.
Yeah. We definitely have the technology right now that we can literally learn anything online, and it's more than anything about yourself. We have to find out what is it that motivates us and moves us. And motivation comes from movement. What moves you to do it? And it could be music. It could be, there's so many things out there that we can do. Just find that thing. And whoever's listening to me right now, what's best for you. You know what you love. You know what makes you feel good. Just listen to yourself and do more of that. Do more of the things that you love. And that would be self-actualizing yourself is doing that, following your path, doing the things that make you feel good. As long as you're not harming others, and as long as, it's not harming yourself, then go for it, do more of that. Do writing, do arts, do business if you love money. Some people love money, and they just, there's a lot of businesses that are actually booming online right now. People, I'm a part of a group that it's called Funneling, and they talk about how much they're selling right now, and they was posting pictures of their accounts with $200,000, $500,000 in sales from people that are buying stuff online. And I know personally someone who owns a company where they sell swimsuits, and they're selling like crazy. And it makes sense because right now we can't go to a store, so we go online and we try to figure it out. And earlier I mentioned the American Idol, how the ratings are going down, but they're also saying that there's going to be a boom in creativity, because they're going to have to come up with ways to entertain us in ways that are creative and filming from home. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other new ideas that are going to come out of this. And so the idea though is to keep, ourselves sane during this time and working on ourselves constantly. So any ideas for that?
Yeah. Find creative ways to use the internet. I mean, I was just listening to, back in the 80s, they had We Are the World, for USA for Africa, when there was a famine going on in Africa. And I was listening, the words are pretty relevant to today. And I was just imagining, how would they get so many people into a room together, so many of our current, stars in a room together, to sing like that. If there was a song about the pandemic now, for example, and you couldn't because of social distancing, but imagine what you can possibly do online. Having somebody sing a 10-second segment, and then someone else singing another 10-second segment in a different state or a different country, and putting everybody together and producing something like that. It would just be anything you could think, or even if it's just two of you, one playing guitar, one playing something else, and you're on different platforms, but you produce it and you release it together. There's just so many ways to think about how you could utilize, the tools and resources that we have right now to do what we used to do, but just do it in a different way. So we're really not, we're not eliminating things we can't, we're not looking at things we can't do. We're just we have to do them in a different format. And how could we do that? How could we create that kind of a structure? I think that would be amazing, unprecedented, if we could have, somebody doing a concert basically all together, but from different places at one time. The kind of editing that would have to go into that would be amazing. But, I think that would be great.
Yeah. I feel like it's definitely going to happen, and I totally agree with you. Be creative. Find creative ways to use the internet to keep you sane. Also, remember, social distancing is physical. It's not emotional. You can still call people and be social on the internet using Zoom, Facebook, whatever platform you decide, and try to stay connected. Talk to your friends. Reach out, don't stay at home and be miserable. There's so many ways to keep yourself, having fun. You can play with people online. You can, create businesses online, share ideas. There's so many things you can do. So any last words before we end this podcast, Neil?
Yeah, just exactly what you said, just to piggyback on what you said, try to ask yourself the question that you would have asked yourself prior in the old normal, if X, Y, and Z in my life was no longer there, I could no longer do that on the weekends, I could no longer busy myself with that, what would I have done instead? Who am I without all of that? Some people ask that question and they get a little bit panicked. But the truth is, think of it as possibility, not as closure, not as something missing or something being eliminated from your life. Think of it as a possibility for the future. If all that was not there, if you asked yourself in the old normal, if all that was not there, if I couldn't do that anymore, who would I be? See it as possibility, see it as positive, not as something negative. Well, I don't know who I am anymore, as opposed to who could I become, right? Yeah. Who would I have been before, and now that's who I'm going to be now, because those things are temporarily closed.
Yeah. I totally agree. Thank you so much for your time. And remember, we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. If you have any questions, we also have our page on Facebook or our Instagram, so you can follow us on MindFit Podcast. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all the people who are listening, people who are donating money. Thank you as well. We really appreciate that. And we hope to see you next week. Talk to you then.
Sounds good.
Thanks. Bye, Neil.
Take care.
This podcast is brought to you by MindFit. Please help us to share this podcast with your friends and family to grow this community. And if you'd like to donate to this podcast, or if you'd like to share your comments, questions, or concerns, send them to mindfitpodcast@gmail.com, or you can call us directly at 714-328-4661.